Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com. It's a Paramount podcast. I'm Mike Saza here at Acrisure Stadium. I'm actually in the replay booth. Chris Anderson, pretty busy place tonight, and I could sit here for the next 2 hours and review what happened in the final, uh, I don't know, 15 minutes of actual time in that game, and I'm not sure I'd understand it any better or that I need to understand it any better than I do. West Virginia's pass defense is pathetic. Um, I don't know what the word is either that you can use to describe the nature of this loss. I think I said unfathomable in a tweet. Maybe that's not strong enough. Maybe there's more accurate ones, but 38-34, snatching a defeat from the jaws of victory here. Timing is everything. Substance and style were not on West Virginia's side here. This is a full-on debacle now in year 6 for the head coach and his program to lose this one the way they did against who it was against. I want to say where do we begin, Chris? But I guess the first question would actually be where do we go from here? Because you can't press reset. You just can't at this point, and there's no do-overs, and this is going to be a tough one for people to get over, whether they're inside that locker room or outside the locker room.
Yeah, because I know obviously everybody that's on our message board, everybody that's on social media is all, hey, it's time to move on. And I said to you, we're going to have some hard conversations if West Virginia loses this game, and understandably we're going to, but on this podcast and over the next few days. But I have one question for you before we ever even get to that point, and maybe it's the most important question. Does WVU, or more specifically Ren Baker, have it in him to make a decision on something this soon? Or a different path, does Neil Brown have it in him to make a decision on someone on the coaching staff this soon? Because off the top of my head, who has Neil Brown fired midseason?
Himself.
Himself.
Midseason.
Okay.
I mean, no, midseason. I mean, he kind of did politely but noticeably move Graham Harrell aside
Yeah.
in the 22 season. But, as far as like something noticeable, really don't have that. Remember the year before it was the weird Kirk Soraka thing where Brown kind of moved himself out of the way. Um, Actually, that was that year, wasn't it? No,
Yeah.
year
It's
before. The
all
year
kind of
before. The year
coming
before.
together.
Yeah, the year before he kind of brought in Kirk Soraka from the analyst role, and he was doing more stuff, pretty much running the offense. And then they hired Harold, and again, he moved Harold out before the year was over. He took over the offense. They went to an RPO style. Listen, we're talking about Jordan Leslie and Shadon Brown here. Let's not tiptoe around that. Chris, you listened as best as you could to the post game. I would invite people to I guess be careful listening to it because it might not be good for your health at this point, but go listen to Brown. There's changes coming. Something's going to change here because he said over and over and over, it's 3 weeks in a row now. We have an issue. I'm not sidestepping. We have to address this. And what was notable to me, Chris, is he said that they can't change the personnel. If you've got to change something and you can't change the personnel on the field because you don't have people in the bullpen, you can't go out and sign free agents. Um, I would be pretty worried if I was a coach. And listen, we know there was a change this week that Jordan Leslie, who was the walk around positionless defensive coordinator, he took over the safeties. I don't know if the safeties were great or not tonight. I know the cornerbacks weren't, and I don't know that he'll become the cornerbacks coach this week. But maybe that's the elixir because if the safeties were better this week, perhaps Jordan Leslie's just a new eyes and a new voice in the room. Maybe we'll see. But it starts there with your defensive coordinator and your cornerbacks coach, who happens to be your co-defensive coordinator. If there's going to be a change, it's going to be one or both of those two. I don't know if he do or does not have that in him, Chris. I don't know what type of leverage that Ren Baker would put on Neil Brown. I think that you can make an argument for the athletic director sitting back and watching what the head coach does here as some sort of check mark on the yes column or the no column for how your head coach operates when he's in a corner right now. And if you're trying to make a decision on him some weeks from now, how he handles this situation, did he put out a fire? Did he throw gasoline in the fire? That's going to be something that Ren Baker can watch happen in real time. He might not tell Neil Brown to do this or that or make a change, but he might observe it and use that in his calculus when he's making a decision on Neil Brown should that moment come, which also makes me think that that is not something that Neil Brown would be caught off guard by. He probably knows people are watching right now and how he's going to react. If it's going to happen, it'll happen now because if not now, Chris, when it gets worse, you'd much rather be proactive than reactive. I think some people might say at this point you're not proactive, you're reactive, but better late than never, maybe.
With you. That's the point I was getting to because I'm with you. I think Neil Brown made it as clear as it could be from what I could hear there that you're right. Look, changes are coming. Something's going to happen. You and I and the fans and everybody else can talk about changes till we're blue in the face, but none of it matters if somebody isn't willing to or capable of making those kind of moves. And it sounds like Neil Brown is prepared to make one of those moves, or at least willing. Like you said, there's only so many things you can fix, and if a couple other if personnel's out of the question, well, okay, because they changed the scheme, right? They said they changed up the scheme, they fixed some things, they're doing something different than they did in week one. So if the scheme's different and you can't change the personnel, just kind of taking it where you can take it there. Because yeah, he harped on that. You're right. Like in the post game, a lot of comments about secondary. Obviously, a lot of questions about secondary, but something. Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't look good. But let me ask you this: is that the only issue? Because I
No.
think it's not just the secondary, but there was something else that kind of caught my eye here, or caught my ear. Because hey, get this, Mike. They did a Chad Scott came in on the post game radio, little coordinator action for post game, and between listening to him and listening to what Neil Brown said,
The cameo there, did
um,
you notice that?
yeah, I did. Um, there were there was a lot of guys didn't execute. The wide receiver didn't execute on this block. The running back didn't execute on this cut. The offensive line didn't execute on these blocks. The defensive line didn't execute on this. The secondary didn't execute on that. Our special teams, we had two guys who didn't execute on the block, on the pump block. There's a more tonight that I've heard of. Nobody's names were really said, but a lot of, I mean, Chad Scott was like, hey, these on that first down play, the CJ Donaldson stretch run play to the outside that was also asked about in the post game with Neil Brown. He was asked about that. And he said, the slot receiver on the right side didn't make his block. And that was a big play. Didn't execute his block.
It's a
Took
crackback block.
took me 5 seconds to go back and see that was Traylon Ray.
Hmm.
And you know what? I'd hated that play call when it happened, but you go back and look, and if Traylon Ray makes that block, it might be a pretty good run. Um, but a lot of comments from both Scott and Brown tonight of unspecified player didn't execute. Unspecified player didn't execute. And I don't really recall them doing that a lot. But it also brings up, hey, why are they not executing? Why is every position not executing? Why is the offensive line, defensive line, secondary, running back, why are they all not executing in key moments?
They look tight to me in the fourth quarter. They looked tight. Like I was like when they got that touchdown, I was like that. I was like, that's pretty impressive because it looked to me like they were nervous isn't the right word, but I think back to like anxiety and anxious whenever Brown said before. But maybe the fact that they were like, you know what, we were in a tussle in the first half. We dominated this third quarter and we're fighting, and hey, it's a 10-point game with 5 minutes to go. And when they got back out in the field, it did not look good defensively and offensively. It did not, especially defense. And then when that first play blew up, and yeah, I didn't know who it was, but you could see it. If Ray comes back and he cracks that guy like he's supposed to, Donaldson gets the edge, and it's probably a first down. If not, it's going to be second and short, which is also good because you're taking extra time off the clock. Like they were in a good situation. Yeah, Chris, the answer is like to your question about is it just the secondary? No, but the truth is, the secondary is why they lost. Um, like they played well enough offensively. They got a dynamic game from their defensive line and their pass rush. Um, I would also say special teams was pretty abysmal for key spots there. Kicking the ball out of bounds again, the block punt. There were some things that were pretty bad again that influences it. And it's I don't know what the numbers are, Chris. When you give up a block punt touchdown, you almost never win. And for West Virginia to shake that off and take the lead and be up by 10, and then to give the game away is again choose your own adjective, really bad. The problem is though, Chris, is that like there's a mentality that this team just whether it's getting up for the game or it's putting this game away, there's something that isn't there that needs to be there. And you can talk all you want and try to be about it before the game, but when you can't do that in a game, if you come out flat in a game you've been waiting for all summer, if you have a chance to step on your rival on the road and just get a couple first downs to win the game or get a stop on defense or just, don't give up a 40-yard touchdown on 2nd and 30, there's something wrong there. And like you could look at your personnel about who's supposed to be the top recruit or transfer at this position, but if the guy doesn't want to make plays or isn't plugged in like he's supposed to, put somebody else in. There's you just because Brown's saying you can't ignore the issue. There's issues for sure, and secondary is the leading one, of course. There's something amiss in other spots before the game, during the game, after the game too that they're going to have to solve before it gets worse, which is good. So we'll see. Chris, my question to you:
Hmm?
the heck happened? That was a
It,
fun game. I mean, if you're an observer, if you
yeah,
have stake in this, it's eventful. It's thrilling if you're on the winning side. It's agonizing if you're on the losing side. To me, it was a great game to watch, and I'm gonna remember this one for a while. But I understand my skin is not like everybody else's. But if you're a West Virginia fan, what happened? Because I think you can make an argument that this is sort of like a combination of thumbnail sketches of like this is like the greatest hits album of the first 6 years when West Virginia was bad West Virginia. You had clock management, special teams, big plays on defense, curious stuff on offense. I don't know. It just felt like this was a compilation album.
yeah. The first thing that comes to my mind is kind of obviously the defense in the second half, but it got me thinking. You know that stock up, stock down story that I write. I have it ready the moment the game ends. So I do start pre-writing, obviously, most of that. And as West Virginia was up 10, one of my stock up items was, man, halftime adjustments. Because West Virginia during the third quarter, their defense allowed -2 yards, -2 yards. And West Virginia over the like first, I think it was 20, was it 25 minutes of the second half or of the second half? Because right, it was like 5 minutes and 45 seconds or something left in the game when they were up 10. West Virginia only had more sacks than Pitt had completed passes during that time. And I was like, this is unbelievable. What an amazing halftime adjustment. I had written up an entire paragraph, and then I stopped. And I thought, wait a second. And I looked, and out of that like 25-minute stretch, West Virginia had the ball for 20 of it.
Yeah.
And I said, hold on. Is this too good to be true? Is this just a law of like the reason it looks this bad is just because the time of possession is so crazy. And so I kind of hesitated, thought about deleting it. Then I was like, no, if it ends this way, it ends this way. And then in the final two drives, just it did whatever they wanted. And then just the complete lack of ability to adjust to a scrambling quarterback, which is something you and I talked about pregame. Like this wasn't a secret that this is what Pitt does. And Neil Brown even said it in postgame. He said they give a first read, they do a check down, and then Holstein scrambles. That's all they do. You and I talked about it in the preview pod. That was one of my things was, hey, we're going to be talking about the linebackers. Well, we're not talking about the linebackers, but my thought was we're going to talk about the linebackers because they're going to stop them, or Holstein's going to be scrambling and doing whatever he wants because the linebackers aren't there or aren't doing their job. Well, they couldn't do their job because they weren't on the field.
Yeah.
West Virginia was running what four or five defensive linemen with no one on the second line. So Holstein literally just dropped back, up, get rushed. Okay, I run for 15. Drop back, up, get rushed, run for 15. And it happened again and again and again. And yeah, maybe on that drive, you don't really have opportunity to make a sub as Pitt's going fast. Well, there's like 15 penalties on that drive. So you definitely had time. And then you certainly had time to make those adjustments for the next drive since your team got the ball back and went on offense. And they still didn't put a linebacker in there to play the second line of defense. So, like, I just went from, wow, what an amazing set of halftime adjustments to, oh my God, like they're just not even seeing what's happening on the field.
Mhm. I was I'll say this: when Robinson scored, I did not leave the press box and go downstairs because I was thinking, man, they got to kick off. They could go out of bounds. It could be a big return. Like they're going to throw the ball. We'll see. It could get interesting. Boy, how smart am I, right? That was good. But I also said earlier in the third quarter, I was like, I didn't say this might be over. I was like, I like West Virginia's spot here because like their offense is fine. It's not an issue right now. Pitt hasn't done anything really demonstrably to stop them, but also Pitt hadn't been on the field for offense, save 3 plays for like over an hour of clock time because they kind of sputter at the end of the first half. You have the halftime that was regular length. They get the block punts. Their defense on the field for a long time. I was like, this is going to be in West Virginia's you know favor here because they're playing their type of game. They're going to wear on, and like the time of possession was something like 20-4 or like 15-4 or something like that at one point. I was like, this is crazy. This is going to be West Virginia's game, and then it just shifts. And again, like how you lose this, I don't know. But I mean, here's another question for you, Chris: is Pitt good? I
No.
might argue no.
So,
Can't,
and here was the other part of it. Yeah, because I'm with you on that. Sorry to interrupt, but that was going to be another one of my questions was if West Virginia won, was are we sure either of these teams are good? Like no matter who won, and I guess it's still the same, just to your point, are either of these teams good? And I'm
I
not sure
would
the
have.
answer is yes.
You'd obviously feel better with a win and not giving away the way they did. But like if they just win, if they kick a field goal at the end and they win it, whatever, they just win the game in some non-demoralizing manner. Let's just say they take it home and win by 10. To overcome that first half, which was so bad in so many ways, to have the punt block touchdown, and then to respond and get like very promising play out of your defensive line, which I think we hinted at could be coming because you may have a plus there by getting more of Jackson on the field to get maybe if you just survive the storm for Holstein, who's just playing pretty easy kind of backyard football, like read check run football, I think is what you said too. So if you survive that, you're like, okay, great, hunker down and you got another week to fix it. I don't know that I feel great about West Virginia, but I would think like that's actually a good win because it could have been a really bad loss. It's a really bad loss now, and like now you're like, oh well, Kansas might not be very good. Well, Kansas, last time I checked, has an offense that'll get them in the arena, right? And just I think nothing can be a given here too. But I just Pitt gets 3-0. That's great. And they look like they're a good team now because they won a rivalry. I'm not sure that's true. So many mistakes, so many mistakes. And they overcame all of them again and again and again. Not all of them, but they overcame enough of them to win the game and made plays. Like the pump block's huge. The 40-yard touchdown on 2nd and 30 is a great play by a receiver who I do not believe had a catch or maybe even a target before that. And then for a team that cannot run the ball in short yardage because they don't have it back, they get that short yardage touchdown run where if they don't get it in there, there's time enough to make it, but it's certainly more interesting. But they found a way to make it work with their backup quarterback on the field too. So, man, just a bizarre game with a whole bunch of things you wouldn't see coming. But again, it just felt like we've seen all this before in different games and different pieces or different phases of Brown's program. The time where they can't do this right, the time where they can't do that right. A whole bunch of them converged at one point, and yet they're up by 10. It felt like it was going to be maybe a concerning but promising day, and just the total opposite right now.
So what, if anything, can change the current trajectory of this team, program, Neil Brown's time here?
It's going to be tricky. They're going to have to figure out a way to I don't know that you can put the fire out in the secondary right now, but they're going to have to find a way to do that. And like what was maddening about watching Pitt was that they realized like we can just run like 3 plays and we'll be okay. Why are they handing it off? Why are they running flea flickers? Some of their fourth down stuff was bizarre. That would concern me because I think if you got a competent offense that's going to come in, you're going to be in trouble. I'm not sure that Kansas is that. Like some of their Jeff Grimes stuff hasn't looked great. I know their record isn't it what they thought it would be. So a win would help for sure. They're going to have to string them together. Trouble is that I just wanted their defenses in an equalizer or even worse than that. If they can calibrate their pass rush and it makes a big difference, and then like their zone, they're playing a lot of zone. I'm not sure that's what they do best. If they have athletes they think they can run with them, that might be a change. Maybe you let these guys play man and try to jam people and not have to be responsible in zone coverages because there's big gaps. There's people running free, and like the longer the play goes, the more the zone breaks down. Well, if you're able to get a better pass rush right now, it looks like they do. You might ask your corners to play some man-to-man and to run with people and survive in shorter plays because the pass rush is better. So there's no great answer. I think that they'll try some things here for sure, but if it makes sense, I would maybe put more on the cornerback's plate. I can't believe I said that, Chris, but like I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure, man, it'll be a bad idea because they haven't done a lot of that. They fancy themselves a zone coverage team, and look at the results. If that's your identity, you need like the Groucho Marx mustache and sunglasses, or mustache and glasses and nose, and you got to change your identity because that's not good enough.
I'm trying to think what year it was. You and I were talking about it on the podcast. So it must have been the last year or two of Dana or early on in Neil Brown's time where cornerback play was bad. And unfortunately for WVU, that has been quite a bit of time over the last 15 years or so. And we made a similar pitch, similar, not quite the same, but it was just like you're saying, like, hey, kind of a press man and just because you're either gonna if you're either gonna do it or you're not. And don't make it. Don't let them think. Don't think. Just do. Just you hear guard man go. That's it. Keep it as simple as possible and just hope that they're athletic enough that they can cover for 3 seconds, 4 seconds, off the pass rush. Because it seems to be with all these zone looks and these different changes and passing guys off, they just can't figure it out. For whatever reason, they cannot figure it out. And I know, again, you're in the stadium. I'm watching from afar, so I'm watching the TV stream, and the TV announcers the entire time are sitting here going, like especially early in the first half, they were saying, like, there's confusion in the back end of West Virginia's defense. The safeties are doing this, talking to the corners. Oh, they're changing defenses like mid snap, basically, like as the snap is getting ready to happen for Pitt. Somebody's coming up trying to tell another defensive back that the defense is different than what he might have already been lined up in, and on and on and on. And it's just like, this is how it keeps happening. This is how it happens every year the last couple of years. So maybe just Roman man, press him up and say, give me 3 seconds, 4 seconds. Best you can do. Just don't think of anything else. Just you cover this guy right here in front of you, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, what else, right? I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Are there other highs and lows? Because we're talking about the collapse at the end. We're focusing on the secondary. We agree that it certainly is the biggest culprit. It's not the only one, but there were some good things. We mentioned the pass rush. I don't know how much time you want to
Mm.
spend on good or even other bad stuff, but this game had so much before what happened in the final 4:55. I don't want to gloss over good or bad. Not one more than the other, but there are some things I think about, like the very bizarre ending of the first half with the I thought some of Brown's timeouts, fourth down decisions were really good and bold, and you trusted Green to do some stuff. But like the end of the first half was really interesting to me too, with that 4th and 5 and calling a timeout, leaving Pitt a chance to do something. That was strange. I don't know. That was the only time that I thought, like, man, the wheels are wobbling here a little bit in the first half, even though it was 17-7. But I kind of thought that otherwise Brown, pretty good job managing the game until it just got crazy at the end, where that also just felt like, Chris, the momentum was so strong against them that I was like, how about a defensive timeout? Maybe. And he did call one. And at that point, you're just like, maybe that's the clock, stop the clock, or maybe it's, to get your guys to take a deep breath and not freak out there too. But that's weird flowers to give a coach, but I did feel like he had his team in position to make enough plays to win the game. And again, be up by 10, you can't discount all that stuff. It worked. Like they overcame a lot to have a 10-point lead, I think, because they did some positive stuff, even though it was bizarre at times too.
So I got a handful of notes, bullet points here of things that I wanted to talk about either on here or just post on the board. Um, from trivial little things to bigger things. One of the trivial ones was, is Traylon Ray the new Reese Smith? I don't know if you guys remember, but we would talk about this on the pod where they would scheme the most important plays of the game for Reese Smith and then never target him again. It would be 4th and 2, and they would pull him into the game to run a play for him. It would work. Braylon Ray, 4 catches, and was it right? 4 catches? Is that where he ended up? Didn't catch one late, or 3 catches. That's why I thought it was 4, but whatever it is, there was a run. They counted one of them as a run. So a run and 3 catches, and it was the very first play of the game, the very first play of the second half, and then the 2 4th down plays. So they are only targeting him on the very first scripted play and the most important plays of the game. I don't know why. Don't care. Just thought that was interesting. Again, some of these are trivial. Um, Garrett Green started 7 of 9,
He's great.
including making 6 in a row, and then went 9 of 21 with 2 interceptions the rest of the way. And I believe the time in between you texting me saying Garrett Green is playing with fire, an interception is coming, and an interception actually being thrown was about 4 seconds. So kudos to you on that one.
Sorry.
Um,
Try for 2 next time. I don't
but
don't hold the second one against him as much. It's 2 picks and it looks bad, but like that's a no-win situation. He's got to push the ball, and what can you do? The first one, yeah, it just looked like he was just getting a little bit loose, and it was, holding on to the ball long and just didn't seem great. I was like, man, I wonder if he's going to put one in the wrong spot here, and he certainly did there. How about Ray's streak of first play touches though? This is crazy.
Hmm.
Six
Yep.
straight games against the first one. That's the 10th straight game that West Virginia's had the ball to start the game. They like their offense and they scripted pretty well. This time it just didn't work. But again, their offense I thought was okay in the first half. It got itself going and did good. Didn't bug me very much. What I think Holstein's probably an upgrade over Yurkovich at quarterback. I think we can probably say the jury's back on that one. He looked so comfortable at times making difficult throws, or so comfortable staying in the pocket, not being worried about it. And that's not much of a sign of respect for the secondary. I'm going to put this out there in a tight spot. I'm not too worried about it. But he definitely was forced out of his game by that defensive line, which kind of brought the scrambler out of him. And I could not believe TJ Jackson after the game saying, like, we didn't know he was a scrambler. We didn't see that on film or whatever, where, like, I know the coach talked about it. I know you and I talked about it, and like he was pretty impressive moving in the first couple of games on the run. So I don't know. Perhaps that's a lost in translation thing, or maybe he was just surprised by it. But he said that like that definitely caught them off guard, and that was a huge difference in the game too when he was able to shake free from some stuff. And I mean maybe the play of the game is that he's almost sacked and he spins out of it. Looks like a face mask, or I guess it wasn't, but he gets 17 or 18 yards, and they're at the 13 all of a sudden. You're thinking, oh boy, this is going to be a field goal to win the game. They got first and 10 at the 13, and there it goes. And, for being as hard on West Virginia for stuff that they've worked on, like the secondary, bringing people in, trying to become, transfer you a cornerback or whatever. They did really work hard on their red zone offense throughout the offseason. It was not great in the first game because they had, between the end of the first game last week and tonight, they had 9 straight touchdown drives in the red zone. That's pretty good. And what's significant about that is that streak ends with a field goal. If they get a touchdown there, it's a totally different game. It's a totally different game. And you get your 4 more points and you lose by 4. That's why those 4-point plays that Brown talks about a bunch. They kind of went wrong there. Like it's a bang bang player. They got to throw a fade to Clement because it's a cover 0. That's an automatic read. Like when you have a cover 0, you have a guy who's going to beat cover 0 because there's nobody over top of him. That's a throw to Clement right there. Pitt forced their hand. Pitt made a really good play call there. I think West Virginia did too, and just Pitt out executed in that spot. But that's what they go to there. And that's the margin. When you play the way that West Virginia did, that margin is going to be significant at certain times. And that 4-point play is right there in a 4-point game. That probably shouldn't have been a 4-point game. I understand that, but imagine if they're going in to tie the game at the end, instead of win it on that touchdown. Imagine how different West Virginia's life is in that last possession if they're just trying to kick a field goal to win it instead of a touchdown to win it. Yeah, that's a great stretch of play, 9 straight touchdowns, but when they failed to get in the end zone, it really mattered.
And one other thing I had, because it was something you and I discussed on the preview pod again, was just get to your best 11 defenders. Again, like maybe one extra DB, one extra linebacker, whatever. Because again, they did this rotation with the linebackers where they had Trotter and Lathan, and they won a couple of times, and then they swapped them out for an entire drive. And that entire drive that Cutter was in, and I don't know if Cutter came back in after that drive because it was bad,
Bad.
very bad. And I don't. Again, we'll see the snap count in the morning, but I don't think he came back in on defense after that.
Which
Just don't if you don't have to take him out, don't take him out. Trotter, that is, and those guys, because again, and even on the last drive, I believe it was the last drive. This is for the game with 3 minutes left, and you have Rodney Gallagher in there. Again, amazing athlete, and he had a nice catch today at wide receiver. But you are again putting a guy who spends half of his time in the wide receiver room and is a defensive back in the most important drive of the game. And one way or another, that's bad because either you're doing that and he's not prepared, or you can counter with that's the best option, which is even more concerning that that's your best option is a part-time wide receiver playing cornerback is your best option in the most important drive of the game and maybe the most important game of your coaching career right to this point. It's tough, man. It's tough because again, I know Gallagher's athletic and he's making some plays, but you're asking a lot of a guy to go out there and play that position.
Yeah, that drive starts after a timeout, change of possession, TB timeout, and he was not in the field. They only had 10 guys in the field. and they were counting, they're trying to figure out who was missing, and he was with the receivers, he was with the offense, and he ran out there and he played. I mean, that's fine. But Chris, who are you gonna play? Dantes Fagan? Um, I think Crandall played a little bit tonight. I don't, or actually, he was on special teams. I'm not sure I even saw spells. Um, but I'm not sure who you put there because you don't really have another option right now. That's um, he's not the problem. He's not the solution. I don't think he's be playing cornerback right now, but um, they probably have to ask some questions about what they got. Did they get this wrong in the transfer portal? Like, why was Hollis so highly regarded and effective at Northwestern? How is he not here? Is Garnes not ready for the FBS yet? Is it too big, too fast for him? There are times where he's really far from the ball and it's hard for him to make that play. Maybe he can do that in the FCS level. It's different here for sure. It's going to be curious. I guess let's just inevitably let's get to this, Chris. I think we both probably think Brown's in a little bit of trouble.
Yes.
Just because, again, you're 1-2. They're going to have their first losing non-conference record in 21 years. That's not good. And they've had a bunch of these weird things where 0-1 for the fourth straight year for the first time ever. We've had a whole bunch of that stuff, and they're kind of adding up. And sometimes when you're here for a long time, that's going to happen. 6 years, you'd rather not have these two steps back moments or seasons. I don't think anybody is going to say that Brown's job is safe right now. I don't believe he's going to be fired mid-season unless things just get really bad. Didn't seem like the West Virginia is that type of it's not a job where I think you got to get out in front and beat everybody in the market. Not like basketball. But yeah, he's in trouble, and he knows this too. I think, but I don't think I don't think he's on a plank right now, and no one's poking him with a sword in the back, making him walk further and further out there. But it's results based. He says that about his players. I'm sure his boss says that about him. Sooner or later, you got to win. And look, the timing this week is unfortunate for him because that Alabama comment certainly opened him up to some criticism for people who've been in the program in the past in different capacities. They didn't like it. And now you want to play Pitt every year. It probably would have done you well to win the game, but to give this one away the way that you did doesn't look good either. And I'm not sure that winning at home against Kansas fixes much. Sure, you're 2-2 as you enter an open week. But then what happens? Go to Oklahoma State, which has been a house of horrors for West Virginia through the years. Although Brown does have a win there. He's at the bottom of a hill. He's got to get back up top right now. That seems like a long way from where he wants to be.
Yep. We talked about it. He's going to get fired right after the game. We weren't sure about that, but losing this game certainly makes the next, month, like, that's it. Like, there's no more mistakes. And now, the expectations moving forward, the bar that you have to get over to kind of keep your job basically is much higher than it would have been had you won this game. So it was a tough night for a lot of people, not just the fans.
It's real simple now. Imagine numbers 5. You got to win 5 before you lose 5. Otherwise, you're not going to a bowl. And you look at that schedule. I think the Big 12 is going to be as interesting as you thought. In West Virginia's identity crisis, whatever you want to call it, is certainly part of that right now. We'll see.
Hold on, real quick. We're not saying 6-6 is good enough to stick around, are we?
No. Okay. That's a good point. Yeah. I don't believe there's a magic number here. I'm not sure 7 would do it.
I don't want to put a number on it, but I'm saying 6-6 is out.
Yeah. Well, you have no chance keeping your job if you're not bowl eligible.
Right.
There's no chance. Like you would know it. And listen, if they hit their 7th loss on like November 9th or 2nd or something like that, he's probably not going to finish the season. Because at that point, what are you doing? So yeah, like I could see that being in. I'm not sure that's Ren Baker's style. I just don't know. I've never sat down and said, "Hey, how do you feel about firing your coach mid-season?" That's not part of our discourse. But again, he's a guy who kind of held on to Seth Luttrell at North Texas and got rewarded for it, but didn't fire. He was gone that year, right? When Luttrell got fired. So there's not like a blueprint for this that I've studied and said this is what Ren Baker will do. So we'll see. People are mad though. Again, losing this one the way they did, where they did. And this whole like anticipation for this season, September's not even over. I think a lot of people pull the plug on this one. And it's just kind of circling the drain for them, which is not what they want. They want to be excited about football. They had that great, 24 hours before this Penn State game, and that was deflating. I don't think last week's win did anything to people, and this certainly didn't help either. So bandwagon might not have been full before. There's even fewer people on it now, even though they want to be excited about this year, and that's not quite the case too.
Can I ask you? You're a historian. This will be 10 seconds. Has West Virginia ever fired coach in the season? I'm kind of scrolling through like the history here on Wikipedia because I know going back from before Neyland, or Neyland's in, so was that 19 before I was born? 1980 maybe to now. They've never fired somebody midseason,
Now and like
a head coach.
Signetti was not healthy, and they let him coach throughout the season rather than kick under the curb before the season was over. That's a
Yeah,
good
I mean,
question.
it's
I don't know.
Bowden, Sherlin, no, Forum,
I mean,
Lewis.
Carlin didn't get fired, but he checked out before he took the job the next day at Texas Tech. So
Yeah, I was saying I'm
uh,
rolling through here. I'm all the way back to World War II, and I looks like everybody's finishing their season. I don't know if West Virginia's ever fired a coach in the middle of the
actually,
season.
I'm if I remember this correctly, I think Bill Stewart was the first interim coach in school history.
Yeah,
Now maybe it's just a different world. We actually had labels we didn't have it back then, but I think that was what I remember back at the time. And that's not because they fired Rodriguez, but like if you fire
yeah.
somebody, you need an interim coach, and we'll see. Time will tell here. Chris, Sunday um, should be very lively. Good moods on the board.
Uh-huh.
I'll have snap counts. Three things I think. Three things I know. Might be delayed a little bit because I'm gonna be getting out of here late. Might have to like spin some thoughts around in my head, try to figure out what to write and what happened. Because again, this one kind of defies explanation or understanding right now too. But you'll have your normal Sunday that begins with the rankings, power rankings, the actually achieved. What else?
The report card, PFF
Yes.
grades. That'll be interesting to see. Plays that change the game.
Oh man.
Do you feel like putting yourself through that? Because this one, oh, give yourself a barf bag because it's up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
Did you know this is the third time in the last 3 years West Virginia has lost a game where their in-game win probability was above 94%? Can you guess the
That's
other two?
well, Houston would be one.
Yep.
This would be one. You said how many years?
Three in the last three.
The Oklahoma game?
Nope.
Okay. I don't know. Oh, that was 4 years ago, I guess, huh? When they
Yeah, so
bad snaps.
Kansas, the double overtime game.
Oh, good one. Yeah.
Apparently, they had that as West Virginia pretty big favorite. So they were 94% when West Virginia took a pretty big lead. They took like a double-digit lead early too. And that Pitt game 2 years ago was 89% at the time that the ball bounced through Bryce Ford Whedon's hands. So,
Real quick, over under attendance Saturday.
ooh,
People would have been looking forward to this one 6 weeks ago.
yeah. And there was supposed to be a lot of recruits coming too. Not quite as many as the Penn State game. Not even probably not close, but there were some guys I've already talked to that were coming. Should we set it at 50,000 again? Like, I mean, that's the mark I think we set for FCS games.
The bad Kansas team, like not bad, but like it doesn't excite anybody here. Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting number. Watch it be a night game, make it the blackout, just to goose everything, make everybody very happy too. All right.
Uh-huh.
All right, we got work to do. We'll get to it now. West Virginia also has work to do. 1-2 after a 38-34 loss at Acrisure Stadium. It's empty now. I'll be packing up, heading out of here soon. Until then, I'm Mike Casaza.
I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you then.